Here we go. Okay, thanks very much for your time, colleagues. I have the privilege of having Rodger Reiswig on the call with us today. I think, Rodger, you and I are LinkedIn friends, aren't we? I think we are.
We are.
I think we are. So let's take a look at Rodger here. Rodger, is that it? Hey, look at
Correct.
that. I know how to spell your name. Bingo. There we go. So this is Rodger with me today. I'm going to endorse him. He knows everything. He knows everything. So we're going to endorse him like that. And so I'm actually live here at the Ross School of Business. I just finished a conference call with NSF International. And those of you who follow what we do for the education industry, we do these teleconferences, and we find that actually in many cases they're more effective than actually going to a conference. So we've been doing this for about a year. We get about 25 to 30 viewers for each of these, and we do them with fair frequency. So in any case, Rodger and I are here, and I have the benefit of getting the voice of the user, the manufacturer on this, and I'd like us to launch very quickly into table 14.1, which was the fire alarm code, and then you had some thoughts about the the healthcare industry. I hope you can repeat. But one last thing. So these are the main questions I'd like to get answered today. It looks like we won't be having our colleagues at Illinois. I may or may not be there, Chicago. Are you planning to be there in Chicago, Rodger? Of course you are.
Yeah, I will be there, and if you're there, I'd love to catch up with you.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, let's see what we can do there. We did put a NITMAM in on here, and I think that had to do with supervisory. We felt that some of the supervisory switches didn't have to be looked at every month. So maybe you can speak against that. Let's see, and then there's linked proposals. So we have a number of proposals in process that we're dealing with, but Rodger's expertise is in fire alarm systems. So I thought if you could repeat a little bit about the hospital industry, Rodger. You were saying that there's some false logic there. And while you do that, I'm going to get to the Simplex page.
Sure. As I've been attending some of the seminars and webinars that I've been watching from the healthcare industry, it seems like there's a move to question some of the life safety or fire alarm systems that we're doing or that we're implementing in those facilities. They have made the statement in the healthcare industry that they've had no loss of life due to fire in hospital or environment in well over a decade. And because of that, they're looking at possibly pulling out some of the requirements that they have currently for fire alarm systems. And I kind of liken it to a car. The cars that we have today are a lot safer than they were years ago, and we have less fatalities, if you will, because of that. So because we have less fatalities, let's go ahead and pull seatbelts out of cars to make them cheaper. And I don't if I understand that logic, where they want to take a little bit of the fire alarm systems out because there has been no loss of life. And I think we can point to, well, we haven't had loss of life because we've done such a good job at detecting and notifying the staff of events and things that are going on in a facility.
Mm-hmm. So you and I talked earlier, when we're laying out some new square footage, fire protection systems are something on the order of 2.5% to 5% of a new building construction. That's about right?
Correct.
Something in that range. Okay. So, that's a significant percentage. And I also had said earlier that the building inspectors, the culture of the public safety industry really originates from the fire safety officials. He's usually the guy who gets paid to make sure that things are safe. There are other hazards that have emerged in modern life. It seems as though we have licked the fire problem rather well. I know a lot of municipalities are not adding to their staff at best when it comes to fire safety, and in many ways there's a sentiment that we've actually licked the problem, or we solved the problem, when actually Rodger's reminding us that we solved the problem because we have these innovative fire protection systems, and we may find very quickly their value when we start to scale back and we start to see the numbers go up. Did I paraphrase you there correctly, Rodger?
Yes, very good, very good.
Yeah. Okay. So just to remind everybody, we're live from this Ross School of Business. I'm not sure if I said that before. So I had back-to-back teleconferences. I just decided to stay here and conduct this one. So let's get into a little deeper, because this is an area where we have challenged the table, this particular table here, and part of the subject of our agenda today had to do with a NITMAM, and we felt that we were joining with the USVA system and the general service and other user owner interests. We feel that, and I think because they're public agencies, we understand their lament. And I often will say that the University of Michigan can do anything it wants. Now, that would be true for many large research universities, but it simply can't do everything that it wants. And that's the crux of our problem. How do we balance things correctly? So if I were to say, for example, and I know this issue's in play, why should we be testing or inspecting supervisory switches or tamper switches every month? What would be your counter argument, Rodger?
Well, I guess there's been some research reports that NFPA has put out that, if I'm citing it correctly, over 80% of all sprinkler system failures is due to inadequate water supply. And either the water has been turned off or the valves have been partially closed and not enough water has been able to flow to be able to allow the sprinkler heads or the suppression systems to act the way that they were designed to operate. And in a lot of cases, as we go around in the fire alarm world, we'll find these valves that are either closed or partially opened or are not fully extended out. And I think there is some good research and some good numbers out there that support somebody going out and investigating these switches routinely. But on the flip side, could there be trade allowances or something in the code that would allow an owner or somebody else to be able to walk around and look at those? Would it have to be a quote-unquote sprinkler person or a fire alarm person to come in and do that? I think that there are times where I think we need to maybe pull back a little bit from that, those qualifications, to allow other ways of those requirements to be met.
Yeah, you raise a good point, because we did work a little bit with that on we worked a little bit with that a few cycles ago about whether we needed to have a full NICET level 2 technician as part of the team that might have only been looking at whether a strobe was working or a horn was working or pulling a manual pull switch. So I think we made some progress, but yeah, that's a fair point. That didn't come up. We got into the cycle. We came into this cycle not giving 72 the higher priority, and so that's why we're behind the 8 ball and getting new ideas out there. Frankly, we also have limited resources, and so when I decide that we're going to give the NEC or ASHRAE 90.1 higher priority, that sort of means that we sort of feel relatively comfortable with the NFPA 72 and the way it's going. However, it does, first of all, before I go any further, are you able to see my screen, Rodger?
Yes.
You are able to see it. So I'm just trying to figure out why I can't make you the presenter. And it's not letting me make you the presenter.
I'm doing it it's on my iPad. That might be why.
Good. All right. Well, I guess you can't do it there then. In any case, you can point me anywhere on this table. We think of this table here as one that we like to see more what we call reliability-centered maintenance concepts put into this. So 2 ideas here. What I just heard Rodger say was one in which maybe we could talk about how we could rationalize the qualifications for the person that might be doing the inspection on the tamper switches. And my experience with this, Rodger, is that's generally done at the state level. Do you have any? How much are we able to legislate that at the NFPA 72, the national level?
Well, I think we're able to do a little bit with that to change that. I know the committees are very open to discussing that. At a state level, we've also been able to go in like California, New York, Florida, and you work with those legislators, those state fire marshals, and speak with them, and in some cases, they might amend them. Now, something that has been added into the code in the past couple of cycles, and I hat tip to my GSA friends and VA friends, is doing a risk analysis or a fire risk analysis, or where you can come in and based on your facility and your plan, you can do a performance-based testing design. And you can say, you know what, based on my facility, my threats, my needs, I think that I can test my devices once every 4 months instead of once a month, or once every 14 months instead of once a year, once every 12 months. Because there are facilities where people are more attuned to what's going on, they're more knowledgeable on what's happening, they take care of it better than the average facility, and they can make that argument or that case. So 72 didn't want to be a stumbling block or require them to do more things than they would maybe have to. So that was I don't want to say it was an out, but it was a way for them to be able to do a performance-based testing program for their facility. And that goes to the AHJ, authority having jurisdiction, and if they approve it, you can go forward with that. So at your facility, for example, you could have a performance-based testing requirement on your, let's say you have 50 buildings, and based on how you test them and how you operate, you could kind of use 72 almost as a guide and possibly change a few things. Did I lose you? Hello?
I'm sorry,
Mike?
Roger. I muted myself because there's a student. I guess I'll have to repeat all that. I'm sorry, Roger. It's a wonderful place here to do business, but it looks like a troop of new students are coming and getting oriented. So anyway, I'll speak in a different direction. So here we are. How about this for an idea? Suppose we were to try to say in the NFPA 4 suite, or could it be established in a new building in the commissioning process, the correct interval for testing? Could you make that? So take your idea a little bit further. We have this table, which we both can see here, where you can see fixed interval testing. In the commissioning process of a new building, could we put an idea out there that part of the commissioning process, and sometimes a recommissioning process, that would be the establishment of the appropriate testing intervals or inspection intervals?
Yeah, you're going right down the exact road with commissioning, NFPA 3, and then NFPA 4, the integrated testing document. And that's the piece that a lot of people would really want to get to, is integrated testing. How do I verify that when a fire alarm system integrates to an elevator system, door system, etc., that integrated component works? And that's where NFPA 4 comes into play. So, and in there, one of the debates that we had on the committee, because I serve on both of those committees, one of the debates we had was, well, if I assemble this team, because I'm going to be the commissioning agent or the integrated testing agent, and I'm going to pull in the elevator person, the fire alarm person, HVAC, and so forth, and we're going to test this thing as a complete system, not just individual systems. So I assembled this team, I heard the catch, we test everything, and everything works the way that it's intended to. So when do I need to come back and do this again? And there was debate. Should it be once every 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, never? And we finally backed up and we said, you know what? This is all based on the individual facility. You can't give a number like that. So the commissioning agent or the integrated testing agent would define that and say, you know what, based on the complexity of the facility, how the facility is used or maybe renovated over the years, then they would determine how often the team would have to be reassembled for integrated testing.
I like that. So has that idea been put on paper in front of the committee yet?
Absolutely, and it was approved by the committee. The committee right now, the way the document sits and is published, is we do not say a date when it has to be recommissioned, we say that it is up to the commissioning agent or an integrated testing agent to determine that.
Well, wait. Are you referring to 4 or 72?
I'm sorry, NFPA 4.
Okay, all right. So I get that. I've been talking close with Paul. We were an early supporter. I think both he and I were a bit at risk for this because it I've got a fixed cost of 0.5% for commissioning of a new building. But how do I manage the recommissioning, which in these very complicated buildings, where these very pressurizations, airflows, signaling, at least in our industry, I know many of them can be more complicated in commercial, but certainly in hospitals, how can you afford to do that on a regular old O&M budget? So anyway, getting back, but what I was driving at is, can we look at this table and say that these may be modified? These may be modified if in commissioning was understood that there was agreement that the fire marshal approved a testing interval that was reliability centered. Whatever was determined, if NFPA 4 was used to commission this building originally, then these intervals can be modified by what the results of the NFPA 4 commissioning program are. That's what I was driving at.
Yep, well, you could do that, but 4 really doesn't even have to come into play. In 72, in the TMS chapter, testing maintenance chapter, we actually offer you a performance-based testing alternative where you could lay out as an engineer or fire protection engineer consultant, and you could say, based on our facility, how we installed it, how we commissioned it or finally accepted it, the documentation that we have, and that's a huge, huge part. And so much so, we added a new chapter in 2013 for Chapter 7 for documentation, because that's one of the biggest cruxes in the matter when it comes to all of this is, can you demonstrate or show to me how these systems are laid out and how they're installed, and that's where the documentation part comes from. So if you can provide all of that data and you can show why that your system should be able to be modified, its testing charts modified from 1 month to 3 months or 6 months to 12 months or what have you, you can do that. You can do that today.
The problem we have with that is not, you and I understand that, and I've seen this elsewhere. Inspection wants fixed interval only because they don't want to be put in the position of being the determinant. Now, you may find a very extremely well-educated, how do I say, a knowledgeable building inspector, fire marshal that would accept a performance option because he's under economic constraints. But your average bear out there wants fixed interval testing, and frankly, a lot of state agencies want to see that too. I was going to, we can open up another dimension to the discussion, and that dimension is the degree to which fire inspections is an enforcement activity that supports jobs. How about, let me say that in a different way. Hard to say that. Hard to say it in any other way to say that, because I like to say that elevators, generators, substations, fire alarm panels don't vote. People vote. And people vote at the level of the state government. And if it's felt that we want to create jobs, and I'm on the front line of the claims that legislators make for creating jobs, very often they're enforcement jobs. And so now you get into the sensitive issue of, well, you've put all this wonderful language, and I'm not being facetious, you put in language that the national committees have put in language, and let's go, what chapter is that? You probably put in performance-based options. What chapter is that?
Well, chapter 14 is performance-based.
Okay, right.
Chapter 24 for emergency communication or mass notification.
Yeah. Okay, so so you do have, so there's language in here already which allows you to relax it. So so that we don't have a technical problem, we have a political problem here. So I think I get that. I get that. So it's a matter,
and it is, and there are, and you know, and I don't want to take a slight at any AHJ out there, because when you step back and think about all the facets of life safety they have to deal with. And then here comes somebody along saying, hey, I want to show you why I can change my supervisory devices from once a month to once every 5 months, and here's why. And they're like, are you kidding me? I have elevators to worry about, how people are going to evacuate, stairwells, firefighters, egress, ingress, and on and on and on. And a lot of your AHJs just don't have the bandwidth to sit down and go through a lot of that, and they will sit back and just hang their hat on and say, do whatever the code says. Mm-hmm. Because politically, I'm not going to get in trouble for that. If something happens and somebody gets hurt and I allowed you to deviate from the code, I may run a risk of having some kind of liability fall on me.
Mm. So let's look at the language itself now. What could you, if you can see here, if I search on supervisor, is there one particular clause in Chapter 14 where it's stated? I'm thinking you know this by heart.
Well, there is. In the beginning of Chapter 14, I'm going to pull up my iPad here again.
Okay, Chapter 14.
It's a performance-based alternative in the beginning of the chapter. And I don't have it in front of me, and I'm not sitting at my desk.
No, I have it. I have it here. I have the mother of all subscriptions. Pretty good company here. Let's see. So I'm looking at general purpose inspections, performance to ensure. Give me a couple of words to search on, Roger. Is it performance?
Performance-based should be the words that.
Okay. Performance. Performance. There's a hyphen in there. Based. Here we go. As an alternate means of compliance subject to the authority having jurisdiction, components.
Performance-based inspection and testing is an alternate means. There you go. 1429.
All right. So 14. Okay. What the HJ says here is that what I'm suggesting is if it was determined by NFPA 4. If NFPA 4 says that this, if you follow the requirements of NFPA 4, that testing interval could be established then. Don't you think that would? Don't you think by having that sentence in there would give more to the state fire marshal to hang on?
No, I think it would. I think you're right. And this is relatively new for us. I say us, the people on the committee of 72. To allow more performance-based stuff. We introduced a whole new terminology for fire risk analysis, and we introduced risk analysis back in 2010 edition of the document. So, I absolutely think we could put some more language in there to make it easier for AHJs to accept this.
Okay, good. When you hear about risk analysis, we're wondering, is that a $5,000 product? Is it a $1,000 product? How do I talked to Josh a bit about this, and he knows. All right, so we want to do reliability-centered maintenance there, and how much does it cost us to get ourselves off the hook for fixed interval testing? Is it by the square foot? Can we say that if you've got a 100,000 square foot building, it'll be a half a cent per square foot to go through that? How do we get a number on that? Is SFPE helping building owners to understand what a risk analysis might cost them?
Yeah, that's a great question because I have not seen any studies like that come out, and it really depends not so much on square footage as it does in the application and the integration, the complexity of the system. Because there are some systems that I look at that have a very high hazard, like maybe a computer room with chemical testing and document storage and other things, and I have all these integrated systems in a very small area footprint. But then I could turn to a 20-story hotel that's just a basic cookie-cutter hotel, and it's pretty easy to do a risk analysis for that. So square footage would be kind of hard. It gets more down to the complexity of your system. Yeah,
I use that as a shorthand just because I know that many people could care less what's in the building. They just want to know how many square feet. But you're quite right. What is the occupancy class? And if SFPE could have a schedule for BOMA and our industry to go to say, well, look, in your industry, classrooms, laboratories, but if you're running a Class D, if you're running a fireworks factory, and you want to do some cut some corners on your fire protection system, maybe it's cost a little bit more than one where we're dealing with a K-12 school. So that's the kind of guidance that would be helpful. So BOMA says, all right, we'll throw that risk analysis into the first cost of the building, which is essentially the commissioning cost. So that's just an idea. I think we've come up with a couple of decent ideas here in our time here for the next recycle.
Sure. Yeah, and I like your idea of maybe tasking SFPE with that. Chris Jelenowitz is their technical director over there now, and I see Chris quite often. I'll ping him on that. I'll ask him and see if that's something he would like to entertain or undertake or possibly write an article about.
Get a table. I will invite you. I have a place here. I will put it on, at least the very least, if he's welcome to come and throw some numbers at us. As I try to say here, if you guys want to talk a little bit about that specific subject, as I say, we there may be only 2 or 3 people on these calls at any given time, but we're averaging 25, and they are, well, it always surprises me how frequently some of these how much attendance we get on these. I know that here's one on building automation systems that never ceases to do. This is about a temperature. 156 viewers on just a sensing device they want to put on a roof. So long story short, we can give you a platform here if you want to talk a little bit more about it. And I'm very happy with our discussion so far. I'm very happy.
Okay, no, that's great. I'll approach Chris about that. So good.
What's his? Let's see if we can find him here. What's his name? Chris
Jelenowitz, and you're gonna task me with that one. It's JEL. I don't know the rest.
There we are.
That's him.
So do you know his?
He's a great guy.
Do you know his email address?
No, I do not.
Let's guess.
I can send that to you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it'd be nice if we can connect with them, and let's see if they can put together a table. So that to give some numbers. Obviously, wait a second. Maybe they've even got it. Let's make sure that they don't even have it here, huh? Let's check that out. What are they? SFPE.org. SFPE.org. All right, and so what is the cost of a risk assessment? Let's see, risk assessment. I think the dentist will say if you want to get a tooth filled at age 12, it probably costs so much. And the doctors, and a lot of people give unit costs for things. So it strikes me that risk assessment, so how much is the darn thing going to cost, and can they be certified through this group or others? So I hope Josh will be listening. I'll make sure these guys hear this, so maybe they'll get on it, and then give BOMA and our industry some numbers, and we'll bake it in the first cost. And then we think, our point about RCM is that it's worked pretty well in the airline industry, has it not? They don't do fixed interval testing. Neither does the military. They balance their risks according to its magnitude. And I've done some if you look on my website, I've done some papers on that. I'm not the expert on it, but I know that RCM techniques help allocate O&M capital more wisely. So I like it. I like the trend of this discussion. It's a little late for this. It's a little late for this cycle, but as soon as they allow us to put more comments in, let's make sure or new proposals. Let's make sure that idea tracks wherever it possibly can. And so we don't lose it, because if we wait for a year, we might lose it. So we got to get that in somewhere, because what happens is if you put a proposal in too soon, they may reject it here, but in another document, they will remind you. If you put it in late, for example, I think NFPA automatically installs it to the next. Yeah.
Right. They put it into a hold, they call it, and it's a hold for next cycle.
Yeah.
But you're right. The document for 72, for example, it's going to open up come January or so of 2016. So we're not that far away when this whole process is going to start over again.
Okay. All right. Well, then, by gosh, it strikes me that This has been time well spent. I don't know if I'm going to see you in Chicago. I don't quite know. We've lined up some of our talent here. I'm trying to see. I have to get back to my fire protection page. Our website is, I'll say, a work in progress. It's better than it used to be, but and it's not really set up for teleconferences. Let's put it that way. But let's see, fire protection, and I think there should be a page here that I set up for the other thing also, because I'm actually here. I'm actually not in my office where I have two screens. I could have done all this work on another screen, but at the moment I'm only doing it on one screen. So this was today's teleconferences. Make sure we at least touched on all the issues here. It looks like I won't get that answer today. It looks like I'm not going to get this answer today, but proposals and comments in process. Did I put that in? Is that in a separate sheet? Okay. We actually have here's Paul. We have ideas on, I believe for both of these, we have ideas on the table. There's just not enough time to deal with them all. I'll have that before we get to Chicago. I hope those guys will have something to talk about during the Knitman period. So this is where we want to go, and maybe in a separate teleconference, let's talk a little bit about healthcare facilities. If you could, maybe we can do it privately and work through some ideas.
Sure.
Yeah?
Let's do it. I appreciate your time today, and always great to speak with you.
Okay. Well, all right. So what I'll do here, I appreciate that, Paul, Rodger, and let's. I don't know when is the next teleconference. I'll certainly invite you to that, but I think before then, I may or may not see you at the NFPA meeting. So. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, say hi to everybody. Say hi to Cliff and others, and I will, at the very least, see you on the worldwide inner tubes, as we call them here.
All right, sir.
Take care. Yeah. Bye-bye.